James Solomons, and co-CEO of Accounting Pod, Judith Cambridge. Thank you so much, both, for joining us.
No problem at all.
On a really exciting topic, right? The future of the new accountants, tech in the future. So how it's going to run today is that we will have a small presentation, first of all, from Judith, just looking back a little bit on what's happened in the industry in terms of tech and digital transformation that's happened in the last couple of decades. And then we'll have the comments from James, just in terms of looking forward, what we need to do to prepare our attendees or students in this case, really for the future that's actually just right here and right in front of us. And we have received a number of questions from our attendees prior to this session. We'll deal with those after James's comments. Then we'll take new questions as they come through as well. Just to our attendees, thank you very much for joining us. What you have in front of you is at the bottom of the screen is a Q&A box. If you have any questions, please pop them into that box, and we'll deal with the questions. So let's get started. I'm excited. So Judith, I think the floor is yours. What I'll do is we have I'll put that on my screen, and Judith will get the presentation started.
Okay, all right, everybody. I'm excited to be here as well, and also like thinking about what does the future look like. And in 2003, I think it actually was, I picked up a book called Business at the Speed of Thought, and that was a book by Bill Gates. And it was written in 1999. So, Sindong, when you said just then, oh, the last 2 decades, I thought it can't be that long. But when you think about it, 1999 through 2019, that'll be 2 decades. And it was interesting that I picked up that book because I'm fascinated, and always have been, about how in business we can just make things go faster. That old saying we had in New Zealand, how do we make the boat go faster? So this fascinated me, and I think the title, I didn't realise that would set the pathway of what I would become involved in over the next period. So yeah, in 2000 and thanks very much, 1999. This book that he talked about, you can get an edge on your competition because, believe it or not, at that time, technology and business were 2 kind of separate things. Often what we call the CTO today, Chief Technology Officer, did not sit in the senior management team, board, whatever. They just weren't present. They're often away in a back room somewhere with their feet up on a desk. I remember working next to one of them, and they had the main servers running pretty well, and the rest of the office was networked with dumb terminals, and there was pretty much nothing else to do, and no one really expected too much else. However, Bill Gates talked also about the connections we needed between cyberspace and industry, and in this information age that was coming, it would be so important that our information networks and digital infrastructures all integrated. So fast forward 2007 on my next slide, it was actually 2006 that something really cool started happening in New Zealand, and that was a little company at the time called Xero. And I have had cause to be reading their prospectus, their early prospectus over the last few while, because I've been speaking to a bunch of entrepreneurs down at the University of Otago, and I said to them, despite distance, here we are in 2006-7, I read this small article about this company. I had clients at the time who were in other places, and it was getting and becoming increasingly difficult to work together across disconnected accounting and information platforms. So I recall if I was in one city and a client was in another city at that time, I would remote into their servers, and it wasn't always that stable, and I put it probably not so secure. And there were a lot of issues with having to lock the accounting and information system while the accountants were looking at the data, posting some journals, doing some reporting, and then sending those completed files back for update into the systems. So you tended to have different versions of data, both financial data and other data, and yet here with Xero, here we saw an opportunity for us all to come together and work on one platform, and I've just noted their development releases. Yeah, the companies at the time were releasing maybe software updates maybe twice a year if you were lucky, aligned with tax legislation. So, when I read that article, I saw it in New Zealand's National Business Review, and I thought to myself, oh, looks like they're going to have a release presentation in Auckland. I think I'd better be there. So I was in Invercargill at the time, so flew to Auckland and watched the presentation and thought, well, this just makes sense to me. One cloud platform where all of us, the banker, the accountant, the clients, anyone else they want in, can all come together on one platform and one version of the truth. So that was my experience with Xero, and I knew that I was on a very interesting journey from that point on. It just made sense. Yeah, so here we are today talking about what is, what's it going to be like for you as accountants, as students in the future. And I say to you, if you're not creative or innovative in your job or even in your life right now, soon, I shouldn't say that soon you won't have a life, because you will have a life. However, if you have that job and you're not thinking in that job, you won't have that job. And I liken this back, because I've had an experience over the last couple of days, I liken this back to those dumb terminals, right, that were connected to the main service for the organisation. And when you think about it, those terminals, just pulled everything off the server. They didn't need to have their own CPU. So you would just work away at these dumb terminals. And I think what we're going to see with the profession, and are already seeing it, is those dumb terminals are replaced with robots. It's already happened in many, many ways. So what is the role of the person who used to sit there doing that work, right? You must be thinking. So as I say, be creative, be innovative, and you've got a future. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that. But a very quick look back at what seems to be almost 2 decades since that amazing book was read. And I have to say, Business at the Speed of Thought, for me, with many of the connected processes that we have today, and particularly those that Xero have put together with some of their add-on partner network platforms, we are seeing business happen at the speed of thought. Yeah,
it's actually really nice to finally see that happening because of technology and innovation that's happened in the industry in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. We've definitely democratized business.
That's right, for small and medium businesses. Yes.
That's right.
Fantastic journey there, Judith. And let me just... Right. Now, James, I think you have some commentary for us for the attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone can hear you okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Yeah, yep. Yep. Take it away.
Yeah, so I have to agree with everything Judith said there. I started my career in accounting in 2001. So I finished high school in 98, but started in 2001 after a year off and a year then full-time at uni. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do when I went into uni. Started in business, but then sort of fell into accounting in public practice and spent the next 14 years up until 2014 going through the motions of being a public practice accountant, and started to see that technology trend hit Australian shores in about 2011. We started to see some of the cloud offerings pop up here and there. I first became aware of Xero in 2011. It took me about 6 months to get going, and then in 2012 I thought I was a late adopter in 2012 of cloud technology, but seems I was an innovator based on the diffusion adoption curve. So in that period between 2001 to 2010 or 11, that thinking process was starting to occur that you referred to, Judith, where people were thinking about what it could look like and what it could be. You know, the last 10 years has been when it's all started to happen. And it's been happening faster and faster and faster than any of us could imagine. And so I think that sort of sets the theme for probably the next few minutes of discussion. It's the speed of change is getting faster and faster and faster, and it's only limited by how fast we adopt it. And I think over the last sort of 6 or 7 years in technology, there's really only been one thing that's remained constant, and that's change. It's constantly changing. If you'd have asked me in 2010, would I be doing what I'm doing today, I would have laughed at you, because back then it was all desktop. It was definitely multiple data sources. You were having to go and visit clients all over the place. And fast forward to about 2013, 14, we did start to see the ability to start working on single data files. And that just opened up a whole new opportunity for the industry. And as I said, you know, I was working in public practice. In 2014, I got the ability to join Xero and work with Xero alongside my public practice role. And then through that Xero network, I got the opportunity to then pick up this CFO role in a company which has a very similar name to Xero. But it was on the back of technology. So what I probably would say there is that the technology that I had available to me, thanks to Xero and the cloud, forced me to rethink the way I'd been sort of focusing on my career and rethink the skill sets that I'd been obtaining as an accountant in my first 10 years. And I did write an article about maybe a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, I can't remember now, called A Career of Two Halves. And it's on my blog. It talked about pre and post cloud. And it was amazing sort of sitting back and looking at the change. So what the cloud did was allow me to have new opportunities, but it came with the caveat that I needed to relearn. I needed to be able to adapt. I needed to be able to see things differently. What that meant was in that period of adaptation and relearning, I got the opportunity to move internal from external and become a CFO of a public company. Now, the technology did part of it. It helped me a lot, but certainly it was the transferable skills and the adaptability that tech forced upon me that sort of has set the sort of direction of my career for the next, I don't know, the next decade. And I think that's really the trend, is that technology is an enabler, and you've got to use technology in your careers to get ahead and to stay up with the rest of the pack. But it doesn't replace everything. There is still that human element, and because of the tech, and because of what you're saying, Judith, around the dumb servers or dumb workstations or whatever you want to call them, if we allow the technology to do all of our work, then eventually it will. And the world becomes like a couple of movies that have been made called The Terminator, where the computers eventually take over and destroy us all. But if we don't allow them to take over and we stand up and rise against the machines, then we'll always have a place in this industry. Probably a last thought on that is that, you know, I've been through the I started when there were green cash books. Just MYOB and QuickBooks Desktop were starting to take a stranglehold on the small business market. And at that time, there was talk of accountants becoming irrelevant because people could do it themselves. Prior to that, Excel got released, and that was meant to eradicate accountants because you could have spreadsheets. And prior to that, calculators were going to eradicate a lot of the work accountants did. But what's been shown is that because accountants in an industry that is so old and has been around for forever, it continues to evolve, and it evolves because the people within the industry are quite smart. So I don't think that as the world gets bigger but gets a bit more connected thanks to the internet, I don't think many are going to lose their jobs. I think though the roles that we're going to play are very, very different, and there's certainly some questions that we've got to answer along those lines. I think if people learn to adapt and learn to build a skill set of being able to change frequently and try new things and be open to bringing in new technology, then that's the key to longevity in this industry.
Fantastic overview, James. Fascinating career path and story. So we bring the two paths together now. James, thinking about how this would apply to, the future of our profession, right? The attendees today, and how that impacts them, how that would impact them. I guess we'll talk through those points in the questions that have been presented to us, to the panelists here today. And so I think what we'll do is we'll jump into those questions, because we'll attend to a lot of the points I think we both covered. So first of all, I think, James, this one is directed to you. In your opinion, what would a career path to CFO look like in the next 5 to 10 years in this age of disruption or technology advancement?
Very good question. Certainly, the modern day CFO, which in the last couple of months I've done a few speaking slots about the technical revolution of the CFO, and even just recently, I spoke to somebody and they really didn't understand what a modern CFO does. The CFO of the old was a bean counter and was historical looking, was responsible for deadlines and reporting and recording what had happened in the past. Thanks to technology, a lot of that stuff is taken care of. And the CFO now is really part of the decision-making framework within any business, whether external or internal as a CFO. And what I mean by that is that the CFO of today and the future is essentially the data custodian, because it's generally the CFO that has all of the information of a business. So not only do they have the historical data, they're working with marketing and they're looking at the ROI on leads and events. They're working with the sales team to reduce sales cycle and debtor days. They're working with the development teams. This I'm talking about tech company. They're working at development teams or the product manufacturing teams to reduce wastage and to speed up dev cycles and things like that. So the CFO starts to get all of this information. And essentially the CFO's responsibility now is to take that information and turn it into information that decision makers need. And because the CFO is responsible for that, they just by default become that place where everybody knows that if we go speak to the CFO and the finance team, they actually got the information I need. So that sort of leads to, you've got to think outside of just the numbers as a CFO. It's not just about modelling and forecasting and budget controls and accounting standards. It's really about being across the entire business. And all the talks I've given and all the talks I've listened to, is particularly in the last sort of 2 years as I've been in a CFO role, have been about that transition from just the numbers to being all across the business. And I think probably one of the easiest analogies or correlations to that is if you look at most, that's a bit of a generalization, if you look at a lot of CEOs and if you look at a lot of company directors, they've been accountants in the past. They've either got an accounting background, they might have been CFOs. I know quite a few CEOs that started out as a CFO. And that's because the CFO of today is, as I said, is right across those things. So the career path is going to be focused on maybe entering in finance, internal accountants, but then slowly or fast transitioning into across the business, dealing with all the different areas. I spent a lot of time with each division showing them information that I have available to me, using that to become their best friend and showing them how it can benefit them in their decision making. And I'm making allies. And so this is this funny part where the technology is allowing that to happen. It's giving me the ability to have this information almost generated at the touch of a button. But then I'm using my skill set, my influencing skills, my communication skills to then speak to them and have conversations with them, not just be the person that sends out an email saying, hey, we need to cut down on this spend or that spend. I'm there working with marketing and saying, we need to think about the ROI on this particular event. You know, how do we make it better next time? How do we get more traction? That's the human element. So the technology is enabling CFOs to step out of the corner office, hidden away counting the beans. That's thrusting them right into the arena of decision making. But that's where, if anything, the technology is great. But you've really got to be, and this does go for public practice as well, you've got to be thinking then about how you communicate that information. Because the CFO basically has pretty much all the information that a business holds at their fingertips. It's a big responsibility, but it's a great opportunity.
Fantastic, yeah. So I guess the key thing, being able to communicate and really build relationships, right, internally and externally, so you can of your team and apply that to the goal business.
Absolutely.
Using technology and harnessing the power of technology, whether it's data, analytics, or whatever it may be, artificial intelligence to help you to do that.
And I think I'll raise it on the next question.
Okay, yeah.
But while you were talking, you know, that comment about the computers taking over, a bit like Griffiths of many years ago, a book that I read. No, absolutely, for me, our business is exciting and always will be. And there is so much we can be doing to lead in this change, rather let the change change us, but how can we lead and lead in the change? So while you were talking, I was thinking, I must just say, I hugged a client yesterday.
Yep, absolutely.
So is the robot going to do that?
That's it.
So, yeah, those soft skills, that empathy, that that human contact and sharing is still absolutely important. At times.
It makes me think. I saw some comments yesterday on LinkedIn. What's going to happen to 100 accountants who will be at a conference today, right? What's the key message for this post on LinkedIn? Some of the comments were around maybe you should tell them that in 2 or 3 years' time, AI and machine is going to take all of your jobs and you'll be irrelevant and redundant. And I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what the profession is actually about. I think in a way the profession is being perceived as the machines. In the past, we can be replaced by better machines, but that's not the case. We're actually human beings with those. So just leading on to the next question, right? This one is around public practice becoming professional. So the question is, in your opinion, what would be a career path to public practice accounting professional look like in the next 5 to 10 years in this age of digital disruption? So I guess I will hear from you first, and then we'll get some comments from James as well.
Yeah, so if we follow on from that thread of James about how you are the multi-skilled has to understand the business holistically. I say that holistically, that means that even your very narrow core degree, you maybe need to rethink the subjects you're taking if you're coming into a tertiary now, and also think about what other soft skills and communication skills you're going to develop across your time at university or wherever. Maybe we're starting to think about how we curate those new skills if they're not immediately available in those environments. Right? So for example, involved with entrepreneurs, we have to be able to speak, pitch an idea well. Example from yesterday, sometimes you need to hug a client. Example from last week, and we from Hudson, talking about jobs coming up where there is that need to have some simple and basic programming skills in the accountant role to assist with what we're talking about here, being the navigator, shining the light on the future for the organisation and bringing that team together and taking the company forward with that. Because you're absolutely right, James, that knowledge required to understand the full scope of the business digitally is a much broader role than what it ever was before. Likewise, within the public practice profession, be prepared to spend the time to truly understand your clients, their sectors and industries. If you really want to add value, you cannot expect to come to me in a job interview and know nothing about this sector or my business if I was a client. And neither can you think that a business, and a small and medium business in New Zealand, let alone an enterprise business, operates in isolation of the broader macro and microeconomic settings. So if I ask a student or a graduate candidate a question around the OCR, New Zealand's official cash rate released by the Reserve Bank, of course that's going to have an impact on our businesses, and that's a common question our graduate candidates cannot answer. And that's a shame, and that's because they absolutely need to be learning and understanding the business environment in which they are about to launch themselves.
Do you have some particular comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly echo everything you just shared there, Judith. As I said, my career has still been predominantly public practice. I mean, it'll be 18 years in January, and I still am a part owner of Aptus Accounting Advisory, which won the award for the most innovative accounting firm in Australia 2 weeks ago at the Australian. Thank you, at the Australian Accounting Awards. And that was a big achievement. When Rebecca and I set out to build Aptus in January 2015, it was about leveraging technology to be innovative. And we're only a small team, and the amount of work that we get through, the way that we empower our staff and the size of clients we work with has been a result of leveraging technology. So it was a good recognition of the effort, particularly more so that Rebecca's put in. But that's sort of that career in public practice is very much about that. So Rebecca and I have been successful there because we're not just about the numbers, we're about the relationships. We handhold our clients, or hold our clients' hands. If I think about technology specific things, we'll set up Xero and we'll set up Vend and we'll set up a rostering system, and we'll connect their information system. I lecture at Macquarie in accounting information systems, and It's all about that data flow. And to your point, Judith, about having programming skills, whilst I've never had programming skills, I can understand APIs. That's how data moves around the internet. I understand things like that. Maybe I don't know how to build one, but I understand how it works. So having a knowledge of those sorts of things, again, I think with any industry, it's about obtaining skills that make you resilient to change or resilient to fluctuations in skills required. And I think having an understanding of that is great. I think the point about, we keep going back to the becoming irrelevant part, but it is very true, and I think we're never going to hear the end of it. A lot of the people in the media are trying to sell a product when they talk about this stuff. But one thing in the industry, any industry is very much lives in its own bubble, so to speak. And whilst us three here, and probably a lot of the people watching today, we understand numbers. Our brains work in different ways. We understand numbers, but particularly in public practice, most of our clients don't. They'll understand a little bit about numbers, but sometimes we can forget that because it just comes so naturally to us. Hence why we're accountants. So we hold a special skill set that is quite valuable to a lot of people. And it's probably our responsibility to be helping them understand it. And I think that's that point about until humans that don't understand numbers are ready to listen to a robot tell them something and act on that robot advice, even if it is like Google Duplex and it sounds like a normal human being and might be a face that looks like a normal human being. It could even be a hologram, who knows? Until they're willing to trust something that doesn't bleed, there's going to be a massive place for us. So I think it's certainly the technology, it's being adaptable. It's very similar to the first one, but it's about those communication skills because we do hold that special place in society where we understand numbers and we have a lot to provide in terms of that understanding the numbers because as the CEO of Xref talks about, and he was talking about today at an HR conference, bots can't tell stories. And so it's one of those things that we are storytellers. We turn the numbers into a story for our clients to understand. And I love that terminology because I'm a storyteller. I haven't shut up today, but I've been asked to speak. But I think that's that element part. Our clients want us to take them on a journey and it's a story. And we're all characters within their business and their own story. And I think that's where that storytelling, that communication becomes so important. It's funny, we're deviating away from the technology. We're talking about everything but technology, but I think that's the beauty of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. The common theme, communication, and how do you build relationships with another human being?
Well, the technology has allowed us to use those stories.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And use that. Right, let's move on. So the next question is around actually from a person who's just started a 3-year business degree, majoring in accounting. What advice would you, the two of you, have for this person for the 3 years at university so that he or she could prepare for the work, job, or business when graduates in 3 years' time? So.
Well, yeah, maybe I'll hop in.
You go first, Judith.
Yeah, I actually think you try and take some additional subjects that are as broad as possible, around these other soft skills we've now mentioned. Go and participate in a startup weekend. Let's start a business in 48 hours. We encourage students who join us with Accounting Pod, join a charity, volunteer for a charity, volunteer to, most of them are still, paper-based or spreadsheet-based or something like that, volunteer to help get them over onto the cloud, It's amazing what you can learn and the people you will meet and the difference you will make, and of course the wonderful result on your CV as well. So my advice is enjoy that time as well. And enjoying that time is not thinking, well, I'm in the business school, so that's where I sit. Maybe you should go and check in on that that music session, because if you're going to be innovative and creative, you need to get those creative juices flowing. It doesn't just happen in front of a screen of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth with one of the comments there, Judith. Before I'd even finished university, I became the treasurer of my soccer club, which I've been there now for 11 years. And I've been made a life member. I've been auditing a scout group for the last 14 years, of which I got a recognition award for. I'm the treasurer of a local charity. I've been there now for 9 years. But I didn't do that for the recognition. I did it because, one, I wanted to help. And as I said before, not everybody understands numbers. And a lot of these charities, the people on those boards don't understand numbers. So I don't donate a lot of money, but I donate a lot of time. And the time, in my opinion, is much more valuable than the dollars. And you learn some amazing skills there because you're on a board of people that don't understand numbers. You build the influencing skills. You learn how to work as part of a team. And yes, the numbers side, moving them to a better system, getting some budgeting and cash flow things in there, it can have a lifetime impact on that charity. But on the flip side, sometimes it's really nice to do something with no expectation of a reward. So I'd agree with that particular person if they're listening today. I started full-time and then I switched to part-time university studies and went to full-time work. It only extended my degree by 2 years part-time. But when I graduated at Macquarie in 2004, I was already a senior manager in the firm I'd been in for 3 years, just because, and it was a smaller firm. It wasn't a big 4 or a big 8 firm, but I built up a lot of skills on the job, which then got cemented by the studies afterwards. Because despite some really great university schemes that I'm involved in myself, that nothing sort of prepares you other than working. So consider that potentially. And definitely, I agree again, Judith, pick some subjects outside of your core areas, because the entrepreneurs of today, you don't teach entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And so if you go and listen in to an area of interest like music, I'm a musician, believe it or not, in my spare time, you might hear about some problems in that industry, and then you might bring your business area to think of a way to solve that problem, and guess what? You might actually have a business idea. I mean, that's how Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. They wanted a way to be able to share what was happening within the campus. And marketing and media wasn't his core. He was a developer. And he sort of thought about it, and guess what? He built one of the biggest brands in the world. So I think, anything outside charity work, again, I'm rambling on a bit, but I've been involved a lot in the last sort of 14 years, and that was recognised by being made an FCA last December, a fellow of Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, for that work back to the community, which was nice. But again, I didn't do it for that. But I've helped a lot of charities along the way, and it makes a big, big difference. And I've learned so much from it.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah. I'm very inspired. I want to go back to university now. All right, so let's just move on. The next question is around professional bodies. In terms of joining a professional body, PAA, ACCA, CPA, etc., etc., what would be your advice?
I'll go first. I'll keep it short. Absolutely. There's a lot of media. I mean, CPA Australia have copped a lot of slack and a lot of flack in the media in the last sort of 2 years. All membership bodies get questioned all the time about their relevance. If anybody checks out my profile, I've probably got more initials now after my name than I do have letters in my name. So I'm a member of about 5 or 6 different professional bodies, and it does cost a bit, but obviously I'm working in the industry, so it can be paid for. But like any membership body, you only get out of it what you want. If you want to sit back and not really go along to different events and things like that, you won't get a lot out of it. But in terms of, and I'm a CA, I'm a member of the Institute of Public Accountants as well in Australia. I'm not a CPA, but I'm a member of company directors, the Tax Institute, the list goes on. But just having, in terms of a career, having one of them, I think is still important if you're going to be working in commerce or in practice. Having those initials does mean a lot to prospective employers. So yes, you should join one. Which one? They're all fairly similar. Each of them have their characteristics. In my opinion, CA is very much tiered towards public practice. CPA is a bit more in commerce. ACCA, similar, probably commerce. There's CIMA, which is the Institute of Management Accountants. That's a great body if you're looking at being a management accountant. So they all have their qualities, but you probably do need to pick one. Become a student member if you can, get involved with it, because, it does give you a source of recognition worldwide. And you know what? The CA program, when I did it, I've been a CA now for over 10 years, it was tough. It was a tough program, not scaring anybody, but it was like a master's degree. But the satisfaction I got when I graduated and got those initials was something to be very proud of. And fortunately, as I said, I've got my FCA last year, and in August I'm actually presenting all the certificates to new CAs, as well as getting my certificate finally after 9 months. So that'll be something really nice to do. And I think, my message to all the new CAs is go out there and push yourself forward in the industry with your designation, because it is important and people do respect it. So the long answer to short question, but is go and choose one and be involved in your professional body, and you'll get a lot out of it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I resonate with that as well, and say to the person that asked this question, what is a professional? In my mind, a professional is a group of people who've come together and agree on to be governed by an ethical framework.
Yep.
So CPA, ACCA, and the body that I'm a member of, they are professional bodies that adhere to an ethical framework. And I believe that is going to be hugely important, a component going forward in this world of much more connectedness, technology. I mean, we've got the incidence of the Anti-Money Laundering Act affecting CAs practice in October, and just that very one thing should be a clear reminder of why we have our professional bodies. Okay, yes, there could be an issue with relevance, and there's lots of things to argue about where they maybe fall down in different areas, but the point remains that they themselves as professional bodies will change, will disrupt, will implode, and will be reborn again, because the importance of having those frameworks remains. It's the same reason, I believe, why we have the United Nations. I don't believe it's any different. So get involved, be part of the change. As James has said, they do have different aspects there. They're more suited to one or the other. But it's very common now to belong to 2 or 3 of these bodies. Yep. So be proud, get in, and contribute, because there's much to be done. I sat on one of the public practice boards and hugely enjoyed that time, looking inside the profession for a period of time when I could. Absolutely do it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the key message is pick one. I know Kent and ACCA have a mutual recognition or a strategic partnership agreement.
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah.
12 months old now, I think.
Majority of them do.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's about help to build thought leadership.
Very much.
Belonging to a professional body.
Very much there.
Help to drive that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is around what are the top 3 qualities you look for in in an entry-level candidate for your finance or accounting team from a CFO's perspective, point of view? So, James?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot on specific skills that you need in any of those areas, but certainly from an entry-level candidate, you know, I hired somebody here at Xref almost 18 months ago. He'd finished his accounting degree, didn't have any accounting experience, but his work experience was in, he worked in hospitality at a hotel. He was doing some training. He was doing some rostering and managing rosters. And so I think, you know, when you're an entry-level candidate, don't be too worried about having the accounting and maybe tax skills on that perspective. If you've worked in a job where you worked as part of a team, you might have been a trainer or a manager at McDonald's or something like that. Those things go a long way. And the reason I say that is because as a CFO, there's only 24 hours in a day, and generally for 8 of those you're asleep. The other, 4 of those you should be with your family. So it reduces the amount of time you have to get through all the work you need to do. And this is the same in public practice. So you need to build a team which can grow, can take over responsibilities for having some of those communications. And as I mentioned before, the modern day CFO spends a lot of time with different divisions and helping them understand, training them on the importance of numbers. So I needed somebody that could do that for me when I'm traveling around the world or at different conferences or working with the board. So certainly some of the top three qualities I'm looking for are sort of communication and evidence potentially of some managerial skills or things like that. But certainly communication would be the key of that. The second one would be a problem solver. There's always going to be something coming up that the internal accountants need to do. And the third one is, and it's hard to evidence this, I guess, but it's the ability to work as part of a team and also learn from part of a team. So if you get somebody in at entry level that's not willing to learn, they're not going to go anywhere. So I'm looking for somebody that I can sort of pick out that they're going to be able to learn from me, learn from others in the business. As I said, we've got to be across a lot more these days than just the bank recs. So yeah, it's communication / managerial skills, problem solvers, and ability to be able to learn from their mistakes. They're the top 3 things. And as you can see there, there's no accounting. There's no accounting involved. That's all soft skills. It's all soft skills.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe I can...
Judith, yes. Thanks for the summary, Judith.
Yeah. I thought of an acronym, and then I saw the acronym on my keypad, and it's the tab button. And my 3 things are think, the ability to think, and that is evidenced in the fact that, you did some thinking while you were studying, and I can see that in the evidence of your results or some other reports or comments within your CV or whatever, and evidence that you can show to me you're a thinker, right? The ability to act. So I'm looking at the tab key again, the ability to act. So, there are circumstances where you'll need to act. Take action, it means. So lead from the front. Take action when it's required. You're not going to just sit back and wait for someone else to solve the problem. You are prepared to put yourself on the line and solve it. And that's often demonstrated in having a conversation with that person where they did get involved in some kind of organisation or group situation or leadership situation. They ran into problems, and it's really good to have those conversations about. So how did you solve that problem? Or, the falling out that you'll get in a highly intense study group where one person's dropping the ball and you're all supposed to do the presentation. Having those kinds of discussions and insights. So think, act, and finally be. So be genuine. As you talked about before, be that person that demonstrates those soft skills across the board. Be a communicator, be part of our team. So do you have the qualities to add value to our team today? Do you have those qualities, you know? And there'll be a particular culture that will fit for your organisation, or any organisation. So, you know, if you really want to be part of that team, then you will have demonstrated you want to be there. So if I ask you about my organisation in an interview, you're going to know something about it. In fact, you might have some ideas to help be present, be a leader, just, you know, be that genuine person. I've got several things. Be resilient. Yeah, but that's my TAB acronym.
Yeah, I think, James, Juice told me something really interesting just recently. You know, what we actually do at Accounting Pod is use accounting to teach problem solving, right? So you learn how to problem solve through this accounting process, and you learn communication skills through presenting to clients, or, you know, attending to the team whether it's team communication, whatever it may be. Right? So maybe the way to look at education is actually about, we can teach all of those technical skills, but the main things we want you to take away are, we just covered just now, right? Problem solving, communication, resilience, you know, empathy. Fascinating stuff. Yeah. All right. So finally, we don't have any live questions coming through. So this is the final question we have. As a student, should I make the effort to learn how a small medium business works rather than just focusing on learning about big businesses as in my university studies? Comments, James?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So yes, there's a lot of focus on big businesses, but that's because, you know, at university, the big businesses often provide the meatiest cases to delve into, the Enron case and the ethics and things like that. I mean, there's always plenty to do, and it's generally the big businesses that either get it really wrong or get it really good. And certainly a lot of those principles can be applied to SMBs. But, you know, I having been a small business advisor, and even Xref is still technically a small business by definition, even though it's public, you know, and listed on the ASX, it is a very different world, you know, cash flow, budgeting. Often the owners are also the directors, you know, owner-operated. And in Australia and New Zealand, most accounting students will end up working somewhere in the small business world or advising small businesses. So yes, how do you do that? You know, if you're working in a small business, as long as it's, you know, not seen as trying to pry into the owner's world. If you're working at a cafe, you ask about the challenges of being a small business and the things that they do. Don't worry about the numbers. You know, when you become a small business advisor, the numbers will look after themselves, but you will be dealing with a cafe owner that's struggling with cash flow or finding hard to hire new staff and all those sorts of things. So ask small businesses, maybe take it upon yourself to walk around your local area and do a survey of small businesses and find out their challenges, because then you start thinking about, well, how could I solve those challenges? That's the problem solving. But yes, you know, small businesses is the biggest driver of GDP in both our countries, and the biggest contributor to those. So it's probably where most of you may work, or you may advise to them. And it is a very different world. And universities are getting better at that. You know, Macquarie has built a sort of small business-based business degree now, you know, focusing on small business. They're trying to do more in the accounting space to educate about being an accountant. That I lecture on a subject which is, I describe the world of a small business accountant. So it's pretty good, but I think nothing helps you more than just reading up. There's plenty of small business literature online, because yeah, it is important. And like I said, most of you will probably end up working there.
And I guess I'd hop in and say, well, why would you ignore 98% of the businesses by number? And I put it to the questioner, why would you ignore something that is essentially a revolution globally? And the examples there are, first of all, the hugely growing area of entrepreneurship. All of those are small when they start.
Yep.
I guess they start in negative in a garage somewhere or something similar, right? So absolutely. And also the, I love listening to Jack Ma at times. So he's the famous Chinese Alibaba founder, and of course his vision is, remember that book that was written many decades ago, Small is Beautiful, the economic theory. He believes we are going to see the dismantling of corporates and the rise of the small business, and that's what he believes his enterprise level business is empowering the SME. So, if you're not in that space, if you're not understanding what's going on there, you are actually missing a potential wave that's going to come out of particularly the Asian region as it kind of rolls around, because it's absolutely happening right now with across the network. I guess both the Internet of Things and the financial networks, we are connecting individually as SMEs. And so what is a bunch of SMEs as they get to scale, right? I've worked in public practice as well, James, and I have this thing about, if I sit down with the banker, right, and they kind of look at you and think, well, you're just working with SMEs, and it did cross my mind one day, they have no idea what the total revenue, gross revenue I as that principal, responsible and runs into many millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
Many hundreds of thousands of tax dollars, and that's not recognised. So I don't believe SME necessarily is small mama papa business that we can look down on, but rather how do we move the needle, and that was Xero's vision, how do we move the needle on those SMEs as a whole, and so as a result we're going to grow our economy. We will grow our economy, and we'll grow our nation, and we'll grow people. And I guess that's something we are passionate about at Accounting Pod, aren't we, Cindy? We're very much about how do we grow that business financial literacy, and what a great place to look but at the SME. And I think I took the Master of Entrepreneurship Finance component at southernmost university here in New Zealand with the very cool couch fires. No, I took that joke. I was thinking they're all entrepreneurs, they're all startups, and realised how very, very important. And yet the textbook that was assigned to the course, once again, was a US textbook, i.e. US who pulls out of UN organisations, and a US textbook very much talking about the way their entrepreneurial network works, which is quite different to this side of the world in many respects, right? So hugely important that we have a good understanding of our region and don't ignore what is happening with one of our major trading partners, i.e. China, i.e. the rise of Vietnam, the rise of Indonesia, all of those areas. And this is probably why you might join ACCA after you've done CAANZ, just putting a plug in there, because those regions, which will be made up of the growth in SME, as they connect digitally and therefore globally, as they connect, absolutely need an understanding of that wave that's going to be coming, working cross borders and very likely cross border with SMEs. Even if you're an enterprise, they will be your customers.
That's right.
So you must understand them.
So the strong, very strong. That's right. We can definitely see that. Very strong consensus here that yes, you should make the effort to learn how a SME works. Yes.
Absolutely.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. James and Judith, thank you both so much.
No problem.
Comments and contribution. Just a summary of the, I guess, the common things with the theme and the words that have been popping up here. Harness the power of technology to help the business to make gain, to grow, become resilient, and I think, James, you mentioned in the very beginning, become very adaptable, right? Whether it's the changing technology trend or the skills that's required. Really becoming more human-centric, right? Understanding and learn how to build relationships, communicate, problem solve, and all of those things. So, any final words of wisdom from the both of you before we wrap up?
Well, I reckon business is exciting. I think throughout my career it's become more and more exciting, James. I don't know how you feel. And I do think about the fact that my core financial skills is absolutely enabling me in this digital age. I absolutely enjoy that, and I would just say to these students thinking about this is a wonderful, wonderful world to launch yourself into, be it career, be it entrepreneurial, wherever you find yourself. Enjoy what you do and just keep learning.
Yeah, certainly. I think, it's the best time to be an accountant. Certainly in my 20 years, it's the best time to be in business. And I think, as technology continues to evolve, the world looks for a place of stability. And, the best thing that these students can do as they go through their careers is remain authentic in the way that you deal with your clients and your fellow staff members, because often, sometimes that's forgotten. And I think, I haven't mentioned it, but my final point would be about that authenticity in business. Because if you're authentic in the way that you do it, in the way you communicate, in the way that you go about running your business or running your teams, then you earn the trust of those around you. And when you're talking about numbers and trust, it's a pretty powerful way to make an influence, whether it's in business or in society. So, that ethical side, that authenticity is critical to that. And as I said, combine that with technology and the best time to be in this industry, it's pretty good.
Thank you so much, James. Just to our attendees today as well, and people watching on our Facebook page, thank you so much for joining. We will be making this webinar on demand, so you can come back and review the comments from Judith and James. To help you, I guess, in your career and on your journey in this fantastic industry. And so a big thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Nice
It's a pleasure.
Today.
Sorry I can't hug you.
Virtual hug.
Yes. All right, James. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
See you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.